All right, so we're going to continue today with the presentation and the lab that I started on Tuesday. And when I looked at the video, in fact, that red line that we got recorded in it. Still should be pretty coherent, though, for you. When I get some time, I'll go ahead and re-record that. I'm going to try to continue today, initially with the... Okay, so last time we looked at how to do hyperlinks. We talked about URLs. We talked about how to create the hyperlinks with the A element, which stands for anchor. And then we also saw how we could start to do some preliminary style with the CSS. And we looked at the CSS pseudo classes that let us style the different states of the hyperlinks in the web page. And then one important thing is we saw how we could create a class of hyperlinks, and so the ones that are in our nav bar we want to run horizontally, which is normally the inline, and then the ones that are in our page where we have our favorite links, we want those to run one per line. So we created the block element for that. We basically redefined the style that the browser normally uses for the element. So the default for a hyperlink is inline, and by setting the display to block, then it becomes one per line. And then obviously we did that in a contextual way. So instead of having that rule apply to every hyperlink, we had it just fix the block display for the ones that are in that part of the page. Okay? So I want to start today by talking about some more HTML syntax. We're going to go through the three types of lists, and then I'll pop back into Dreamweaver and help you to continue with Lab 2. And so we should be able to finish Lab 2 today. If we don't finish in class, you need to finish at home and submit it. All right. I said before class started, a few people are having some issues with UC file space. And so if you can't get your page up on UC file space to take a screenshot of it and try it in the browser, that's okay. As long as you're creating the page locally and using the validation tools, you're doing it right. Okay, the validator will tell you. As I mentioned, the browser is fault tolerant. You can't tell that you did the page correctly by looking at the browser. You have to use the validator. And that won't bite you yet, but later on when you start to do scripting in your page, it won't work if the page is not correct syntactically. Okay? All right, so let's go ahead and look at the lists. We have several types of lists. Generally, lists are block elements. Nowadays, with all the JavaScript and style libraries, we sometimes use the list to do other things. So like some people create collapsible and expandable drop-down menus using list markup and things like that. In that case, you don't really see it as a list because the JavaScript code kind of takes that over. These are pretty simple, but I wanted to say something. Every time I do this assignment, I always have a few people that don't get that there's a specific way to do the list, and instead what they do is they try to arrange the content on the page so it looks like a list. So for the lab, make sure you actually use the syntax for the list. There's three kinds. And basically the way I've set this up is each one of your subpages will be a different list. So we started to work on our student page and I showed you how to use the template. And remember, we kind of pre-built our nav structure so we didn't have to keep editing each page as we added one in. So that's where this is going to come in. So for instance, you're going to have an unordered or bulleted list, which is the list of courses that you're taking currently. And then we have a numbered list, an ordered list for our favorite things, whatever that could be. That could be your favorite food, your favorite sports, your favorite manga, whatever. And then the last kind of list is a definition list. And I'll ask you to just do some definitions that are from some technical area as you wish. Okay? Okay, so we're looking at the first list, which is called an unordered list. This is a bulleted list. And you can see that the entire list starts with a UL, unordered list, UL element. And then each item in the list begins and ends with an li element, a list item. Okay? Does that make sense? So this is going to create a bulleted list with 2 items, and it should, and here's an example. So we have one now that has 3 elements, and there are items, pardon me, and apples, pears, and peaches, and then that's how that looks. You can see how the bullet works here, and this is just like a regular bulleted list in Word, okay? So we don't need to go into a lot of the details of this, but if you do some research into the CSS, you can play with all of this. So you can like change what the icon is for the bullet and all that, okay? Basically, I want you to get the basics of the syntax. The second list is really similar. So the only difference between an unordered and an ordered list is the parent tag. So if we look up here, we have OL, ordered list. This is going to be a numbered list. And again, I can use the CSS to control the kind of numbering that I have. So it can be, Arabic letters, and we can actually create sublists. So you can create a very structured kind of document like you have when you have a Word outline, where you have different levels, and it'll automatically use a different numbering for each level. So my top level might be Roman numerals, and then my next level might be Arabic, and then I might have lowercase letters for the third level down. Does that make sense? Now obviously this is just a simple list. It doesn't have any levels, right? So this is going to just show up. Here's our example again. It's the same exact, but now we have an ordered list instead of an unordered, so it will be numbered. Okay? So these are real easy. And then the next list is a little bit different. And so ordered lists and unordered lists are real simple. A definition list has 2 elements for each item. And so you'll see that the outer tags here are the DL for the definition list. And then each one has a term and a definition. So we could say definition term, and I don't know what DD stands for, definition, okay? So that one's a little non-intuitive. You have to pay attention and kind of get that. And here's an example where we have 2 elements. So again, notice that each element has both a term and a matching definition. And this will be displayed in the browser just like this, where it'll show the definition on the first line, indent the term on the first line, indent the definition on the second. Now, as you can imagine, I can style all of this, right? So we've sort of seen the basics of styling. So I could basically create style for a DT element. I could change the font size, the color, the font style, all that. And then again, I can do the same thing with the DD element. So for instance, I might want to make it italic. Okay. Okay. Now, for doing these lists, we sometimes do what are called contextual or descendant CSS selectors. Let's stop for a second. What is a CSS selector in general? Anyone? What part of this is the selector? So right off you see I got basically 2 parts, right? What part of the selector? Say again? I didn't quite hear. Did you say this part? No, that's not the selector. Those are actually the rules. So that's what I want to do to it. And then what I want to do it to is the selector. And so we have different kinds of selectors. If I just have an element here without anything else, that's called an element selector. So the selector is the first part. Now, do you guys see why it's called a selector? What does it do? It selects the parts of the document that I'm going to apply the style rules to that are in the body. So we call this the rule body, and usually it has more than one. It doesn't have to, but usually it has more than one style, okay? So we're going to see that CSS has a variety of selectors One that we've already seen is this, right? So let's see, display is block, all right? Now, that's important. That's an element selector, so that applies to every anchor element, all right? And if I do this, pound main, space A, then it only applies to the anchor elements when they're in a section that has an ID of main. Okay? You all with me? All right, so let's look at this and see if we can figure out what this means. So here, I'm applying whatever these styles are to the list item, right? But not every one, only the ones that are in an unordered list, right? Okay, and then how about this one? So that's a way that I can write rules for specifically for either style of list item, all right? And that's going to apply to every UL or OL list, okay? So those are called descendant or contextual selectors. It's descendant because in the markup, the LI is inside, so it's like a child element of the outer one. And then contextual is kind of the similar meaning. It's within, it's in the context of being in a certain place, okay? Real quickly, this is called an ID selector. So if I do this, this just says on an element, which could be anything, that has an ID of main, apply these rules to it. If I take that and I add something, now I'm talking about something that's within that element that has the ID of main. Are you starting to see how the CSS works? Okay, it'll get pretty complicated because it's very powerful and we can do all kinds of things with it. So we can apply style to the list items when they're in either the unordered or the ordered list using these contextual or descendant selectors. We can also apply style directly on the term and definition. And it doesn't really make sense to use a contextual one there because they'll always be in a DL context, right? So those, and just so we're clear, those elements can't occur outside of being in a list. So you can't just create a list item element, throw it into the page. It has to be within a list. So real quickly, if I wanted to write rules on the term, I would do this, DT. If I wanted to write rules on the definition, I would do this. And I'm pretty sure you're going to end up doing that as part of this week's lab. Excuse me. Got a little coal dust in my lungs there. I was forging yesterday. We want to try to, indent our CSS, make it look good. Let's see. Not sure how much of this I want to go through. I want you to have time to work on the lab here. So I think you can probably read the rest of this presentation on your own. I talked about the logical physical thing earlier. What happens is we had a bunch of older tags and you might not see them anymore. It's useful to learn them because in some context you can type them. So for instance, it turns out whenever you do anything in Blackboard, there's a little HTML button and you can actually use the HTML to style it. Some of the social networks are like that too, and so you can use these old deprecated tags. So like if I want to make bold face in my posting, I can use the B tag, which you shouldn't use in HTML. It's called deprecated. What does deprecated mean?
It's no longer used.
Exactly, no longer used, outmoded. Okay, so that's an earlier feature that has now been removed from the language. And a lot of times when you're talking about code that's deprecated, if you use it, then it'll break. It won't run anymore, okay? In the HTML, what will happen is the validator will tell you that that's deprecated. So you shouldn't have any deprecated elements in your HTML5 pages. Okay, I'm not going to run through these. You can read about these in our textbook, but they're just structures to do specific things. So, and here are the deprecated tags, which kind of work the same way. Again, some of these online sites let you use the deprecated tags. So I'll let you read this on your own. I want to kind of get here to our lab today. Real quickly, let's do this one here. So we have two ways of doing quotes. So we can use the Q for the quote, which is going to be an inline quote, and we can use the block quote, which is going to be a block element and typically has more information. Both of these have an attribute called cite, which can be the URL for the source of the quote. Okay, so this is sort of a semi-formal way in the HTML to do the same kind of thing that you guys do when you write an academic paper, right? So you all know how to do citations and things like that. And it's hardly as complicated as that. So it doesn't really give you anything about the format. It's just a link to the source, and that's what the cite element is. But that's a good thing to know, and I wanted to touch on that here. Okay. All right. Let's see. Again, these are like really specific, and so we're not going to use them too often. This text indent you want to use, and it just turns out that the text looks better and is more readable if the paragraphs are indented. So usually I'm going to put this on a P element. I can put it on the body element or other elements as well. And unfortunately here, this is an older slide and it kind of slipped past me, but what's wrong with this slide? Can you tell me? Those are absolute measurements. We want to try not to use those. So what I should do is I should use the EM measurements, where one EM is equal to a character. So I should indent my paragraphs maybe 3 to 5 EM, which is 3 to 5 characters. Okay, so try not to use fixed values. You can do text alignment. You can do the line height. Again, this gets really complicated. I usually don't go into the finer details of this. So if you're a designer and you know about things like kerning and that, you can play with this a little bit. For usual, just basic design, though, we don't go into this level of detail. So I can control the spacing between the words and between the letters. And sometimes we do that for what I call sort of magazine style. So for instance, when you're reading an article in a magazine, the first sentence of that article might have a larger initial, character for the, capitalized at the beginning of the sentence. The sentence itself might be set up in a larger font and spaced differently than the normal text. Okay, so those are stylistic things. You can definitely use those, but that's a fairly refined kind of usage, and we have quite a bit to do, so I usually okay, so I've gone ahead and opened my page in Dreamweaver. I'm going to go ahead and set the font so it'll read a little bit better. So I'm not going to do the entire lab. Could somebody close the back door there for us? So I'm not going to do the whole lab. You should be able to do that on your own. And if you want to just work on it and sort of kind of pay attention to what I'm doing, that's fine. I'm just going to highlight some of the stuff here. But again, you should be able to follow directions and do this. So what I've done is I've opened what I had left off. I have my index.html page. I have my links page. And I'm going to work through the first part of the lab where I'm going to work on the CSS. And eventually we're going to change this quite a bit, because right now it just is a single CSS. And to make this work on different sized platforms like mobile and that, I need to add media queries. So we'll do that later on as I start to cover that with you. So if memory serves, when we just did a quick scan of this, we're going to start off by doing some CSS to add styles here. So you see I have a header, main, and footer, and I'm going to add those into, whoops, sorry about that. Okay. So that's what I have left off, and so I'm going to add header, and then a style block for that, and then footer, style block for that, and I think we're going to do main as well, although I usually tend to write separate styles for the main because I use the ID. So if we look up here, do we have an ID? Yeah, I thought I had a rule in there to fiddle with the interesting. So I'm kind of interested here because, oh, I see. So basically I have a specific rule. You see where it's pound links there? Pound links is an ID for one of the main elements. So instead of writing rules for main, because that changes quite a bit, I tend to use the name of the main, and then I write rules specific to that page. So really, if you think about it, pound links is a set of rules for what's, just let me finish, what's in the main element on that particular page, the links page, okay? If I write rules for main, they're going to be for every main. Go ahead.
My file space is gone.
Yep, that seems to be the issue today. A lot of people have that. Do you not have access to your work then, or?
No, they're not on a flash drive.
Okay. Well, I would say follow along. I am recording this, so you'll be able to check it out at home. That'll help. And maybe take notes today. You know, I mentioned at the beginning of the quarter, the flash drive is the way to go, okay? Not to belittle the efforts of our USIT people or anything. Okay, let me pop back here into the directions. So we're going to add these elements here. So just as a working convention, I'm going to copy them real quick and just paste them in there so I don't have to bop back and forth between these. So I'm just going to go ahead and open some space here. And one thing you have to do is you have to remind me to keep up high enough on the screen that you can see what I'm doing, okay? So I'll try to keep moving the screen up so I'm at least sort of in the middle there. All right, now obviously these aren't going to work with this list item thing, so I'll have to delete those as I go. So do you understand what I did? Just to save time, I copied all these ahead of time. And one problem with that is I'm not sure if I'm still going to be able to use the Dreamweaver. Oh, great, it's still going to work. Okay. All right, so real quickly, what's happening here? If I'm working on the header, and if I specify a background color, what will my page look like now? Do I have a background color on the page already? Yeah, see, so basically the reason I asked you this question is I wanted to talk about this. We have an inheritance of style. So if I apply a style to the body, anything within the body has that style unless I apply a more specific style. So that's what I'm about to do here. So if I give my my header a different background color than what I have on the page, it will have that color, but the rest of the page will still have the other color, okay? Now, I'm not going to be able to really look at this stuff until I get all this done, because it's broken until then, okay? So let me just roll through this real quickly, and I'll use my settings. Don't use my settings. I have a horrible color sense. I'm not a designer. Take the time to make the page look like you want it to look, okay? Yesterday when we were forging, my friend's father is a jeweler, and he has done these new knives, and he had a selection of these materials that are basically made from minerals that he uses to make the handles on the knives. So I looked at the one that's sort of orange. I said, oh, that's the one I like. He says, you know, nobody likes that one. Until he combined it with ebony, so he had red and, you know, the black and the orange, which of course to me that's Halloween. What is it to everybody else in Cincinnati? Bengals, right. So, you know, you want a Bengal color handled knife. Anyway, sorry about that. I tend to get excited about my stuff. Okay. I'm going to need to take a quick look at my page. So let's see, I guess that's an orange background there. What's a good color? It's going to work with the orange for a new background color for the top of the page. Any of my design people here can just holler out a color for me. Say again? Nobody uses orange. Okay, well, what the hell, I guess I'll just do it. Come on, damn it, there we go. Let's see, I think sort of a yellow might work. It'll be kind of bright. All right. All right, what's the difference between background color and color? That's correct, but I ask a specific question. So I have background color and color, and I'm applying both to the header, right? So what's the difference between background color and color? Yeah, color is really the color of the text. And that's kind of confusing because you would think, hey, if I got background color, why don't I have foreground color? Why don't I have text color? But it doesn't. So you just have to remember that. Okay, here for the margins. I'm going to use 1 EM, which is 1 character. Whoops, forgot to put the colon in there. And I'll leave those that way for now. And this might be a good place to show you how the padding works here. I think that this will work out. So right now I don't have padding on here, and I'll leave it out for a minute and show you. Okay. So I'm just going through here, and by the way, there's a shortcut. If you do set all the margins to the same value, you can just say margin colon 1 EM, and it understands that you mean that. And later on we'll see that there's even another shortcut where if you only give 2 values, the first is the top and the bottom, and the second is the right and the left. If you want to center a block element, you set the right and the left margin to auto. Okay, so I've got the Comic Sans right now, so let me try a different one. Let's see, that's a monospace font. I don't want that. Let's try the serif. Again, I'm not really good at the design, the typography, and all that stuff, which I have the highest respect for people that know that stuff. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and just temporarily remove these so I can show you what I just did. So now I've got all these values entered, so this should be syntactically correct, and I can save it, and then I should be able to see it over here. And you can see already Okay, we're gonna have to change that font, right? That sucks. But do you see what happened? Okay, now, a couple of things here. There's no padding on this, which is why it's run up against that. So right now, I'll put the padding in and you'll see that. And also, you can see where the border is going to be on this too. So I didn't put a border in yet. So let's see. Let me get back here. And that really sucked. All right, let's just go with our old Verdana there. Save, pop back over here. Yeah, that's a little bit better. Okay, kind of plain though, but it's all right. All right, and so while I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead now and add the padding. So I wanted you to see the difference here. There's no padding on this. There is a margin. The margin is on the outside of the element. So I'm going to go ahead and put a border around this, and then I'm going to put padding in it. But you can already see where that text is run right up against the internal edge. Even though there's no visible border here, that border is demarked by the color because I have a separate color. Okay? So let's go ahead and put the padding on here. And padding left, 1 EM. I'm just going to copy this. Oops. Oh, I had that in the buffer, sorry. Control C, Control V, Control V. It's really good to learn all the abbreviations for the editing. Oops. So left, right. Again, you could just use padding, and if they're all going to be the same. The reason I'm not doing that is I'll go back through later and adjust them, and they won't be the same. So I'm just going to go ahead and put them in now. Okay, let's take another look at our page. Now notice the difference here. So you see where the padding has been added between the end of the content and the content? You see that? Okay. All right. Let's do, I'm going to jump ahead and do the border now since I've been talking about it. Let me go ahead and check my directions. So I think we add the border a little bit later on. Oh yeah, here we go. So font style, padding left, padding right, font size. Let's see. So I think at the very end of the assignment, we go ahead and play some more with this and add the borders in. Yeah, back to the style sheet, part H. Let's see.
The border's step 2A.
Oh, thank you so much. I would have flailed around looking for that. Okay. So let me come back up. Yeah, here it is. So border color, border style, border width. So I know there was a method to my madness, and it turned out that one, whoops, shit, I just changed the assignment. Oops, Control Z. Oh, you piece of crap. Come on, damn it. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to add these in. This is a really good place to do it this way because then I can kind of teach you what these mean, which hopefully you will also get from putting them in. So I'm going to do my border color, border style, and border width. Now it turns out there is a shortcut where I can just say border and list these all on one line. And that's a good thing to learn, but I can never remember the order and I tend to screw it up. So, okay, so border color here, I want this to be black. And then the border style, And I'm going to go ahead and try to, there we go. So this is nice because it tells me what styles are available. Oh, you, god damn it. Just because I scroll the screen, why would it make the box disappear? That's annoying. Okay, so we have dash, dotted, double, group, hidden, inherit. Inherit means that there's a border on a parent element and you want it to be the same. That's not going to work here because I don't have one. Inset, none, outset, none obviously is no. And these are just different styles. The one that I typically use all the time is at the bottom of the list, and it's solid. Okay? So I'm just going to use solid here. And then the width, and it's usually better to use one of these options, so medium, thin, or thick. Rather, you can do pixels as well here, but I recommend that you just use that. Okay, so I just added 3 border elements to my header, and now when I go back, you can see that I have the border around this. And basically, because it doesn't fit here on the screen, you can see that I'm getting the word wrap on my menu. Okay? In a full screen browser, though, that'll look pretty good. So real quickly, if we preview in Chrome, there we go. Okay. How we doing? Are you looking at your page? Are you getting the same effects? Anybody have any trouble or anything? Okay. Sometimes when you have trouble, you can just ask your neighbor to take a look. You know, another pair of eyes. Sometimes it's hard to see stuff, and so you know, don't feel like you can't help one another. It's obviously better if we all help each other to learn. Okay. Whoops. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is kind of a replication of what we did previously on Tuesday. So if I look here, I've got my index.html and my links page. And if I go back into code view, I've got these links all made, but I don't have these pages yet. So I'm going to go through now and create these pages, which is, you know, a big part of what you're doing in this lab. Again, you want to use your template for this. So I'm going to go ahead and open my student page template. And I know this is the right one because here is the navigation thing, right? All right. So now I'm going to use the save as. Now, in my case, I have to be careful and save it into the right directory. So I have this Lab 2 directory that I'm working in today. Okay, so now I'm going to change the name of the template, and looking at the sequence of pages, I'm just going to work down through them. So the next one for me is going to be song or poem. And I think what I'm going to do is do a song this time. So song.html, and I'll save that. And then what about this?
No.
Okay, let's hear that again louder. No, don't ever do that. That's horrible. Don't let it update your links. Okay. Do you want me to explain why? When you're doing full mode Dreamweaver, what happens is you actually just do everything on a local site, and then you publish it to the server, and it updates the links when it does the publishing. We're not teaching Dreamweaver. We're teaching HTML5 and CSS and some other things. So Dreamweaver is just a tool That's very specific to the tool, and that tends to make it a mystery about how the linking works, right? So we want to do the linking manually. Now later on, if you're going to be working in the industry and using Dreamweaver, you can do that, okay? And let it handle the links for you. But that's why that's a problem here, because I don't have a site and a remote server that I'm publishing to with Dreamweaver. Okay, so this is my song page. So the first thing I'm going to do is go through, change the href to the self-referential one, which is just the pound sign. And then come up here and change the title. And I think I'm going to use a Rammstein song. Who knows about Rammstein? Awesome. And instead of my song, I'm just going to call it the name of the song. So, Die Sonne. Okay. And now here, you see where it says bio? That's from the first page, which is my bio index. So this is going to be song or poem. So I'm going to have it called song. And then I can put style on the main here directly. What would that look like in my CSS? So how do I do an ID selector in the CSS?
Pound song.
Awesome. Pound song. Very good. What's your name?
Corey.
Corey. Excellent. So pound song and then my rule body. And that would apply just to this area. And that's the only one I'm going to have in this page and probably in the entire site too, right? But if I did have multiple songs and I used this technique, I would. Now, if I knew I was going to have multiple songs, then I might use a class selector instead. But for, you know, something that only occurs one time, I often use this sort one of selector. Okay, let me stop the video. Okay, so again, I went to the internet, I got these lyrics, I'm going to paste them in here and then format them. So for my song, so we'll make this first stanza a paragraph. And then I'll go ahead and close that. Oops. And then here's the second paragraph. By the way, what I'm doing is a real common kind of web thing where you have some existing text and you just want to put it into the HTML and format it so people can use it. And often when I'm doing extensive text, I'll start to use the macros in Dreamweaver. Do you guys know what macros are? What's a macro?
We could program key shortcuts.
Yeah, so you can record key sequences and then you can replay them so you don't have to retype them. And you can do that with simple cut and paste too. So like so if you look at what's going on here, for each one of these paragraph elements, I want to put a BR tag at the end, right? So I could just go ahead and copy that and then all right, let's see what it looks like here. Let's go to design view. There we go. Oops, what's wrong with my BR tag there? Okay, you see what's going on here? There's something wrong with the BR tag because it's showing up in the markup. So Tom did something wrong. Let's go on back here. Oops, I'm in the wrong file. Where is it? Song HTML. Here we go. Oh, I see. I clicked on the wrong thing. Oh, man, I got that ass backwards, didn't I? So this is a singleton tag. So now check this out. I made a mistake. I want to fix it. Instead of typing each one of these, Control F, and so current document, source code, find the BR tag, replace it, Control V, with the correct version, which is this. So I got the tag wrong. So find all, replace all. So there we go. It shows me all the replacements it made. Be real careful when you use find and replace. You can do this across files in Dreamweaver. Sometimes that's real handy, but as you can imagine, it can be really screw you up. All right, let's go back to design view. Now I have it displaying correctly, okay? So I made a mistake when I typed the files in. All right, so there my song is looking pretty good. I think I need to add some stuff here. What's going on here? You see how it's like right to the edge? Well, that's because I don't have any margin or padding or anything on it. So let's see. Let me check the directions here. I'm inclined to do something that might not be in the directions, so I don't want to screw things up too much here. Make this clear for you. Where are we at on our time? Got 20 minutes? Okay, let me close this. I'm not going to need that again. The reason I ask is I have to upload the video and give myself a little more time. Last time I kind of jammed myself up, and Chris had to help me with it. I also don't need this window anymore. Let's see. There we go. All right, so we added the border. I put the song in there. Oh, don't worry about that accessibility thing. That used to be true, but it isn't anymore. All right. So you don't have to put vertical bars or square brackets around your menu. And one of the things I like to do now is I kind of make the menu look like buttons. So I put borders around the menu elements. Okay, let's see. Do we do any kind of styling on the P tag here? Well, you don't have to do this, but I'm going to show you something. So again, the idea with class styles is I create a series of kind of different types of elements. And one of the most common ones to do that with is going to be with the paragraph. So if we look here, these paragraphs are within the song element. I could just do a contextual descendant selector where I'd say pound song space P. Now we put style on a paragraph when it's within the song. If I was going to have a bunch of songs, I might want to use a class selector instead. And so then what I would do is on each of these P tags, it would say class equals song. And that's what I'm going to do now, and I'm going to use the find and replace real quickly to do that here. So again, Control F, and notice I already have the P selected. I'll paste it back in here, and I'll say class equals song. By the way, if you wanted to do a poem instead, you could do this with poem, right? So again, I'm just going to replace all. And so now, if I go into my CSS, you see where I have the P norm text? That's for text that's quote-unquote normal, whatever that means, just normal reading text. And now I'm going to create a new block, which is going to be my song. And you know what? I made a mistake. I should have called it song text. So I'm going to change that. I'll go back and change it again. One of the things I've learned over the years is you want to try to work in a fairly, regular way, okay? So like I try to always use camel case when I create things. And you know what that is, right? Everybody know what camel case is? What's camel case? Somebody tell me.
First word lowercase, everything else after.
Every additional word capitalized, right. By the way, don't use spaces in file names when you do web stuff. You definitely don't want to do that. All right, so let's go look here at the song. So now I'm just going to replace class equals song with class equals song text. Okay. Oops. Okay, so now I can write style for just the text that's in my song. I could have done the same thing for poem if I was doing a poem. And so I already have now two kinds of paragraphs. I have normal text paragraphs that look like this, and I have song text paragraphs. And I started by copying the two, but now I'm going to change them up a little bit, right? So, and I have the padding, that's good. I definitely want my songs to be italicized, so maybe my norm text shouldn't be. So I think I'll just take this out here. So I'm going to actually change the norm text because it makes more sense to me that the song would be italicized than the normal text. And I'm definitely going to change the font. Okay? Let's see what that looks like. Okay. I think I'm going to change this to red. Let's see, RGB. See what that looks like. Red seems to work for Rammstein. Okay, so we go to song, go to design view, and that red doesn't work real well on the orange background though, does it? So it needs to be a little darker. Oops, come on. Oh, that sucks. All right. So that's straight red, and that wasn't dark enough. That looks a little darker. Let's try that and see. Save. Back to the song, design view. Sometimes when you come back, you have to click to get it to display. It didn't change much. Let me take a look at it in the browser. I still don't quite like that. Maybe I'll just make the color black. Oops. What is that? Somehow we got Dreamweaver help open. All right. Again, use your own sense of the aesthetic here. You do want to try for color combinations that are readable, and it's always good to remember that some people are red-green colorblind. So, oh yeah, it looks a lot better with black text. Okay. All right. Okay, so I just kind of did part B. Part C is add a favorites page to your website, and this is going to be your ordered list, right? And then part D is your courses. That's going to be a bulleted list, an unordered list. And then you have to create a definitions page. And then I think we already did our links page the other day, so you should add the links to it in that. And then you do style stuff for each one. It goes back in the end and says, okay, now run back and fix the self-referential link. So again, when you have a menu bar and it has a link to the page you're actually on, you want to replace that with the pound sign. And that just saves the server or the browser from reloading the page when people hit on it mistakenly. Okay. So you should be in a pretty good place to finish Lab 2 this week. Don't forget to give me the screenshots. Don't forget to use the validator for each page. So this will happen every time. We'll always validate our HTML pages, and we'll give you a screenshot of that. You can use the one in Dreamweaver if you want. And you always validate your CSS. Now you're only going to have one CSS for the whole site. So yeah.
If I wanted to like do a return, so it's just the next line, what's that?
There's two ways to do that, and it depends what you're doing. So are you doing your song or poem right now? Okay, basically, a song or a poem has what are called stanzas, right? So the stanzas, you want those to be in a paragraph, and then at the end of each line where you have a line break within the stanza, you use the BR tag, which is a special singleton tag like that. And I actually just did that, and I got it recorded on the video, so you can always check it later, okay? Now, look up here a second. One thing that I added was I set up a class for these. So if you're doing a song, it would be song text. If you're doing a poem, it would be poem text. Which one are you doing?
Song.
Okay. So this is song text, and you got an equal sign in here, and then that's the close. So see, opening paragraph, closing paragraph, then a singleton BR to make the line go. The difference is the line. Look at me. The lines within the stanza are one after another. The lines between the paragraphs have white space, right? That's what that'll do. Anyone else? Any other questions? Okay, let me go ahead and get the video uploading here. And it looks like we did a little better today. So I'm going to say